Welcome back to GlobeTrotting. If you are new, feel free to hit that subscribe button, it would certainly mean a lot. Throughout the 2010s, discussions were held about the potential release of a prospective Airbus A350-2000, this a new high-capacity model. However, Airbus would go on to shut down such discussions, confirming that it was satisfied with the program, and it was and had priorities that were elsewhere. Now, at the midpoint of 2025, for the first time in years, conversations have now finally re-emerged about a prospective new higher capacity model, with Airbus discussing the evolution of the A350 program. Is an A350-2000 a reality for the future, or still simply a dream? So firstly, the A350-2000 emerged in the 2010s, and at its core, aimed to extend on the capacity present through the already existing -1000 base model. In an ideal scenario, the new high capacity model was intended to be produced as a solution for airlines seeking to replace their aging quad-engine planes. If Airbus had been able to execute a feasible stretch of the fuselage as intended to create a new variant, there were hopes that the passenger capacity would far exceed that of 400. The increase in size and seating would have looked to position the prospective jet with the likes of the 777-9, and if anything, at least for the hopes of Airbus, exceed what its counterpart was offering customers. While the proposed jet attracted attention, by the end of the 2010s, Airbus had seemingly all but shelved the A350-2000 concept. At this point, it was felt to be the right decision, even from analysts who had long studied Airbus and believed that while there was some interest in a new high-capacity model, the odds were never quite in the favour of the variant preceding. Airbus also recognised that the process of bringing such a plane to market would have been quite considerable. It would have required resources that at the time simply couldn't be spared from other existing problems. As the 2010s drew to a close, the certification process of new planes also underwent a dramatic shift, and planes struggled to obtain approval like they once did, with plane makers prioritising other areas, and for the planes that were in the process of being certified, it was a true uphill battle, trying to prove to regulators that the jets were safe, with so many other hurdles that had to be overcome. Moreover, Airbus had already invested heavily in other projects, including the A321XLR, which has now launched, and even you've got to consider in the A350 program itself, as it went on to confirm an A350-1000 ULR for Qantas. Away from the A350-1000 ULR, the manufacturer is progressing with a dedicated freighter, the A350F, aimed at transforming the cargo industry and shifting it more for once in their favour. All these endeavours, whether emerging in the late 2010s or being announced only in, say, the last few years, became a big priority, and a stretch seemed to at least not be in the picture. As Airbus executives stated in the latter stages of the decade just gone, the current A350 family was deemed adequate, and further development was not required. Priority was placed on building up production levels, selling the existing units it had, and therefore growing a backlog. Despite the adversity faced on the commercial aviation industry and Airbus's silence on the prospect of a new model, things began to shift just months into this year, reporting emerging that Airbus was currently evaluating the prospect of developing its commercial airplanes division with a new A350 model playing an integral role, if it was deemed as suitable. Those reports came from the CEO of the plane maker, who spoke with Aviation Week and discussed plans to advance the program to meet what it called demand. These comments from the CEO emphasized the need to find ways to counter the sales of rival aircraft, the 777X from Boeing, and yes, looking directly at the 777-9, which is competing with the A350 program despite still being uncertified. Airbus believes it can extend the capacity of the A350-1000, not only to help combat sales, but also to provide a more efficient answer to airlines' requirements for high-capacity planes. However, details on this prospective new variant, which some have chosen to call the A350-2000, the A350 Stretch, and more, remain scarce. Comments, however, that have aired in the last couple of months do represent the first mention of such a type in nearly half a decade, after it was seemingly shelved. Despite this, Airbus is confident that if it was to proceed with the new model, it would represent an evolution of the 350 program, rather than just simply slotting into the existing portfolio. And it would still be some time away. According to some analysts, given the time it would take to implement the type and get it certified, there would be room to certainly adopt fresher technologies in future decades, making this, yes, that truly desirable evolution of the program that some airlines would be very keen on committing towards. So will it release? Well, while internal interest once more exists to evolve the A350 program, like I've said, it's not been the first time we've heard some discussions on an A350neo that have not exactly taken a hold just yet, and now this high capacity variant. There are still very many obstacles that need to be overcome, and new endeavours that must be launched first. For the manufacturer's passenger jet portfolio, there is the -1000 ULR, which is set to debut with Qantas in the coming years. This ultra long-range model is poised to reshape how Qantas approaches its international flying, and showcase what the broader wide-body program can achieve with just a small amount of further innovation. Away from your passenger flights, Airbus is progressing with work on its upcoming dedicated freighter as well. For the manufacturer, this is a genuine attempt to shift the narrative, a narrative which has seen Boeing so heavily dominate this sector of the industry. Thus far, while the jet has yet to operate a flight, let alone be rolled off the production floor, it's attracted quite a lot of interest, with several major orders being placed, even despite some delays. Therefore, the prospect of a new high-capacity model of the 350, it remains very exciting, but it's not guaranteed, given everything as well Airbus is working on. Can't forget its new single-aisle replacement to the A320, which really has to be a hit and has to work. This is without even mentioning the stabilization of production and eventual increases that are planned, as alongside the shoring up of its financials. With that being said, internal interest has once more reignited. Therefore, it is undoubtedly a possibility that Airbus moves ahead with such a plane and feels there is a market for it. Airlines such as Emirates have, for many years, continued to believe that slot constraints will be a problem in future decades, and if plane makers don't offer something like the A380, something else must exist of a similar capacity to help them combat this. So therefore, could such a stretch to the 350 be a potential perfect plane for Dubai-based Emirates? It's a question to be asked. There is much that still needs to be deliberated internally, feasibility studies must occur, and a market case must be presented. But I am keen to hear your take down below in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, be safe, and I will see you in a couple of days for your latest industry analysis right back here on GlobeTrotting.